Hidalgo needed a win in order to make the playoffs, and they barely got one. With a big overtime win at La Feria, Coach Scott Ford's team makes the playoffs in his first year as head coach behind his big freshman quarterback, Shea Patterson, who throws the touchdown right there. So that sets up 3 rematches in 3A. Hidalgo was the last team to beat Kingsville Kings Brahmas. That was a big upset right before district started. There was a fight after the game. Nobody from Hidalgo was involved. It was all Kingsville players and coaches and parents getting into it on their side. So now they have to revisit that drama, and now Kingsville has to play down here. It's at Sam Stadium against Hidalgo. Next up for the winner of that will be the Carrizo Springs or Ingleside, most likely Ingleside. And then number 9 in the state, El Campo, waiting in the 3rd round. In Division II, it's La Feria at Raymondville. And that is a rematch. Earlier in the year, Raymondville won that game by 10 points, 34-24, and it was at Raymondville. Next up is a big, tough matchup. Divine and Orange Grove are both 9-1 going into their matchup, and of course, Wimberley, always stay tough, waiting in the 3rd round. And the other matchup, it is another rematch. Port Isabel and Lyford. Earlier in the year, Port Isabel won that game at home. They take on the Bulldogs again at Bobby Morrow Stadium in San Benito. The winner of that game will most likely take on the Sinton Pirates, with Pleasanton's Cowboys waiting in the 3rd round. So first off, David, we talked about it. All these rematches, when you have 5-team districts, you have to play somebody before district, and it turns out that all 3 of these games are rematches.
Yeah, you got to fill your schedule, and there's a lot of games to fill, and it's the it's the easiest just to look close to home, and it's inevitable. But it is kind of unusual to have this many rematches, and I think it could be interesting that you have some good tape on them, and you should be able to scout them out pretty good.
Out of all the 3 games, Joe, if you had to say this one will reverse the decision from earlier in the season, is there one of the 3 games that you would say would be most likely to have a different outcome than it did earlier in the season?
Well, just because of the chemistry of the teams, the La Feria Raymondville game would be the one that you throw in the hat and say, well, who wins this time? I think the other 2, I think Hidalgo's gotten better. Patterson, folks, is a lot better than that last time around, and I think Port Isabel's gotten a lot healthier. But that other game, yeah, that could go.
If I remember right, I don't even think Shea Patterson played in that game against Kingsville. I think he might have still been injured, although I'll check on that. But let's go ahead and make our picks for the 2 All-Valley matchups. It is Port Isabel and Lyford, Bobby Morrow Stadium. David, who have you got?
I'm going to take Port Isabel. I just think they're this is what they do, and there's playoff time, and this is what they do.
Yeah, they've got the big billboard back up at the stadium, at Tarpon Stadium, that tells you how many times they've been to the playoffs in a row. So maybe that's a good sign for the Tarpons, who have been kind of schizophrenic this year.
Yeah, I'm going to pick them too. And remember, preseason, I said Port Isabel would be our last Valley team standing. So here you go, boys. Get ready.
Now, let's remember, Lyford's loss this past Friday, most of it was without their quarterback, Scott Arnold, who left with, who was sick, maybe with the flu. We'll see how he is this week. But I've got Port Isabel winning this one at home as well. The other game, La Feria Raymondville, like we said, Raymondville won at home by 10 last time. Does it end up the same way this time, David?
I am picking Raymondville. I don't have any deep analysis.
All right. Same thing I talked about it. Put them in a hat. I pulled out Raymondville this time.
Right.
Well, I'm going to go with La Feria just because this team has shown some real spark at times. And hats off to Oscar Salinas for getting the Lions back in the playoffs. And Jesse Ramon is a great quarterback. I can't tell which Raymondville team is going to show up from week to week. I'm going to pick the Lions right there. But when we come back, we've been into it on 32 versus 31 5A. We're going to talk about the 35A teams and their chances in the playoffs. It's all when we come back on Sunday Sports Extra.